All right, so as always, yeah, feel free to ask questions along the way. This is Weighted Sufficientarianism, Carl Knight on the excessiveness objection by Dick Timmer in Economics and Philosophy. And if you're in chat, I'm sorry if you're in YouTube at the moment, but if you're in the Twitch chat, we get to vote on this stuff at the end, and you can, participate, and there's a review that we'll have, and you can go look online, and we'll have that up soon, where you can see what how chat and I felt about this paper. So here we go. Down already? I don't know. Find out. All right, so here we go. Introduction. Sufficientarianism holds that providing enough or close to enough as is possible is an important distributive goal. Okay, so we're trying to have a world where we provide sufficient resources for people. So that's, I guess, the idea is we're making everyone can just at least get by. We can distinguish two types of this view. Lexical sufficientarianism holds that providing enough is lexically prior to other distributive goals. Alternative weighted sufficientarianism holds that providing enough is non-lexically prior to other distributive goals. I have no idea what this lexical reference is. Oh, wow. You have an apple, but okay. Hey, my first YouTube comment. What's up, Ray? How you doing? Okay. So, put differently, lexical sufficientarianism holds that providing enough trumps all other distributive goals, whereas weighted sufficientarianism rejects such strong priority. Okay, so basically, you should always be providing enough, like a sufficient amount for people to get by versus, well, you should take other things into account. That's fine. In a recent article, Enough is Too Much, the Excessiveness Objection to Sufficientarianism, Knight argues that lexical sufficientarianism is excessive because it requires too much in various distinct ways. It requires that providing enough justifies any losses, no matter how large, and no matter to how many beneficiaries above the threshold. It requires that providing enough justifies complete insensitivity to concerns for responsibility and desert, and it, Is desert or desert? Yeah, desert. And it requires that any distribution above the threshold, no matter how unequal or unfair, must be allowed if doing so promotes providing enough. Yeah, so this is the, I've seen this sort of debate in the universal basic income crowd. They're saying, look, we're trying to get everyone to be sufficient, and it's not worth it to try to judge who's sufficient, because you're going to give like some people who don't need the money an extra $1,000 or whatever. And you just have to eat that loss. But like, people don't like giving rich people extra money. But the idea is that either you're trying to give everyone just enough to get by and it's not worth it to try to figure it out, or these other people say you gotta take certain things into account. If they're rich, you don't give them that, and it should be obvious. But that would be a weighted sort of thing, where if people need it, or if people don't need it, then they don't get it. Makes sense. Knight concludes by discussing responsibility catering weighted sufficientarianism, for short, luck sufficientarianism. Okay, so this makes sense. Yeah, if you're lucky enough to not need it, then you don't get it. But if otherwise, you do get it. Okay, so luck sufficientarianism holds that a distribution is more just if it gives weighted priority to providing enough, increasing overall advantage, benefiting the worse off, and being sensitive to individual responsibility. Yeah, so this is the thing. If you don't need it and you're not being a jerk, if you're not being a jerk about it and you do need it, then you can get like whatever, you can get some extra benefit. According to Knight, such weighted sufficientarianism tackles the excessiveness objection while maintaining a distinctive commitment to providing enough as an important distributive goal. However, because luck egalitarianism and other types of weighted sufficientarianism still forego large advantages above the threshold for the sake of providing enough, Knight rejects luck sufficientarianism in favor of prioritarianism. There are too many terms in this paper. Prioritarianism. Come on, just say what you mean. Look, it's either you give people more money than they need sometimes, or you just give it to the poor. And then you have to define who's poor for whatever reason. In this article, the author will assume with Knight that sufficientarians should prefer weighted sufficientarianism to lexical sufficientarianism. Yeah, I guess like taking the hard line. Everyone should get enough. Maybe that's unsustainable because there'll be too big of a cost every so often, and you won't know that if you're just not even looking at the costs. You still have to look at costs. Okay, but Knight's discussion of weighted sufficientarianism aims only at responding to the excessiveness objection. He does not explore qualification weighted in much detail. As a result, aside from Lux sufficientarianism, Knight neglects alternative versions of weighted sufficientarianism that may be able to meet the excessiveness objection. In this article, I will defend a specific version of weighted sufficientarianism, which I will argue will be argued to be preferable to both Lux sufficientarianism and prioritarianism. In brief, I will defend a sufficiency view with multiple thresholds, which gives weighted priority to benefits directly above and below its thresholds, but which gives lexical priority to benefits below the lowest threshold over benefits above the highest threshold. Okay, this makes sense. So basically, this person is doing like, some sort of like, can I draw on the screen? I haven't done this in forever. Let's see, where am I? So like, yeah, we're talking about like, people who need stuff is going to be like a bell curve. And boy, is my handwriting terrible. Yep, not even looking. So yeah, so basically everyone here, everyone is like, this is the money you need. Everyone like below this point, they really need the money and they get it, like always get the money. Then everyone over here, like up into like this, like up here or something, whatever. These people get it some of the time, or like you can pay attention. But like if you're like in this area, you're poor, then you always get it. And then these people get like, some things. So it makes some sense. So, I mean, again, is this a great idea? But again, this is just shifting the the window of who gets what. Does this really make sense? Because you're still trying to, judge who gets what. Is just, softening the blow by having a bit of a window. Whatevers. Okay, in this article is structured as follows. In section 2, I distinguish 3 types of weighted sufficientarianism. In section 3, I draw Knight's excessiveness objection to define 4 desiderata for distributive patterns, such as sufficientarianism and prioritarianism. In section 4, I introduce partially weighted multi-threshold sufficientarianism. In section 5, I argue that this view is preferable to Lux sufficientarianism and prioritarianism. Section 6 concludes. These things annoy me. Why do you need this? I do this myself a little, but I try to keep it to like 2 sentences, not 3 sentences. But it's like, yeah, when you realize how annoying it is to publish papers, then you do this because it cuts down on reviewers making dumb mistakes when they read your paper. It's kind of amazing. All right, section 2, 3 types of weighted sufficientarianism. According to weighted sufficientarianism, providing enough or close to enough as is possible is a non-lexically prior distributive goal, which means that it could be outweighed by other distributive goals. Though Knight presents a compelling case in favor of weighted sufficientarianism over lexical sufficientarianism, he does not explore the several ways in which sufficientarian views can be weighted views. However, this is important to understand the possible sufficientarian responses to the excessiveness objection. In this section, I will discuss 3 types of weighted sufficientarianism, which I will draw on when defending my proposal. Okay. So yeah, how do you actually tell who needs what? That's all that's going on here. 2.1, fully and partially weighted sufficientarianism. The first distinction between weighted sufficientarianism views is between fully weighted and partially weighted views. Fully weighted views hold that providing enough must be non-lexically weighted with all other distributive goals. Alternatively, partially weighted views hold that providing enough must be non-lexically weighted with some distributive goals, but has lexical priority over others. There are several ways of partially including weights, and consequently, partially weighted sufficientarianism can take several different forms. One might, for example, say that providing enough always has lexical priority over some goals, but has weighted priority over other goals. Alternatively, one might sometimes give providing enough lexical priority over certain distributive goals, whereas other times reject that it has lexical priority over these goals. For instance, one could give priority to benefits to those below some threshold when the alternative is benefiting the super well-off, but still give no priority to those below that threshold when comparing them to people just above it. Yeah, so again, you have a soft cap on where you're saying the cutoffs are. It's like if we're giving rich people money, then screw the rich people. But if you're giving like middle class over the poor, then it's like, well, it's a little softer. What is this all about? This person has so much jargon. It's a little bit annoying. But basically, how do you make a cutoff? If you're saying we should provide enough for all the people, well, where do you put the cutoff? And there is two positions. The lexical just says everyone should get enough, like, to get by. Consequences be damned. And then this person is in the weighted thing where it says, look, we have to make certain limits. Like, some poor people should get some amount of stuff, but not all the poor people all the time, because we have to wade in, have like weighted discussions on stuff. So basically this person is putting in what they consider to be like smart ways of drawing limits on and cutoffs on who gets what. That's all. So the lexical is the absolute, everyone should get everything, and then the weighted stuff is how do you actually decide when the cutoffs should be a little softer. Yeah. Damn, you have a great paper about wealth distribution, and that is super interesting but rather long. That's awesome. Yeah, but like this is I don't know how much, like, there's always going to be cutoff somewhere, and this person's just saying you have to, make a sophisticated cutoff. I don't know, like, how clever you can actually be. It's just saying be sophisticated. Don't just be naive about this. You just can't give all the people all the stuff. Sufficientarian, what a world. I've never seen it before, but it's a bit too grandiose. Yeah, I'm a little annoyed at all the words in this. This is weighted sufficientarianism and prioritarianism. But like whatever, maybe that's how it is in this area of philosophy and economics and philosophy. But like seriously, luck sufficientarianism, prioritarianism, like these words are very big and completely unnecessary in my view. But that's fine. Like I said, it's not my area of philosophy, but whatevers. Yeah. So like they were saying right here, like you might want to always give poor people the benefits if you're taking away from rich people, but if there's people just above being poor, so like just like lower middle class, then you don't give the poor people the benefits necessarily. If you want that paper that takes these ideas of distribution to an experimental level and is so cool, I mean, I'll take a look, but like not right now. But like I will take a look at it, which is kind of fun. It's like, yeah. So if you're going to experiment on like this sort of thing. So like this is a theoretical paper, but yeah, if you're doing experiments to see actually how that works, that is very neat. Okay. So author takes it that Knight's luck sufficientarianism is a fully weighted view. Yeah, so this is the luck saying if you're lucky enough not to need the stuff, then you don't get it. It holds that a distribution is more just if it gives weighted priority to providing enough, increasing overall advantage, benefiting the worse off, and is being sensitive to individual responsibility. If so, providing enough never trumps any of the other distributive goals. A different type of luck sufficientarianism, however, might hold that providing enough has lexical priority over at least one but not all of these goals. If, for example, providing enough has lexical priority over increasing overall advantage, then if the choice is between either providing enough or increasing overall advantage, priority must be given to the former goal. But such sufficientarianism is still weighted because if the choice is between providing enough, benefiting the worse off, or being sensitive to individual responsibility, these different goals must be balanced non-lexically. In those cases, providing enough does not always outweigh these distributive goals. Yeah, so this is the thing. You can imagine where someone's like, well, we can never take, like especially in the United States, individual responsibility is like the number one priority because we have a real fetishization of like individual responsibility here in the United States. So they might say we can never actually take away someone's autonomy and their individual responsibility. And so even if it makes them worse off, and you're going to hear this all the time in the United States, even if in some sense they're going to be starving, you're taking away their responsibility. They're using lexical just as an absolute term. I have no idea why lexical is the term of choice in this area, but it just means absolute. So if it's like an absolute thing where you have to always provide sufficient resources for people, then that's the lexical choice in this area. I don't know why they're using that term, but I guess that's how it goes. So I mean, yeah, it throws me off because it's used differently in different parts of philosophy and sociology. And, oh yeah, anyone who does not know, let's give Anne a shout out, and this is going to be interesting. So let's see. Give Anne a shout out in Twitch chat, but then we're going to also give Anne a shout out in, let's see, is this going to work? Shout out. So do the old style. Do I get the old style thing? It's not working. Why did that not work? Oh, did I fix it? I don't know. All right, whatever. Let's try that again, actually. No. Oh, did I just do this? Damn it, what did I do? Because I'm trying to throw a shout out to you in what's it called? YouTube chat. Let's see. I don't know if anyone's there, but there you go. So if anyone is watching in YouTube, our buddy Infernal is a political scientist and sociologist, and does stuff on her Twitch chat. So you can go hit her up on where you just saw in chat. Twitch.tv. You're there, but okay. But yeah, so there we go. Dearie. Yeah, so this will be interesting. I could probably do multiple shout outs. I wonder if that would work. Oh my god. That would be crazy. Yeah. Alright. Might have to get some new chatting tech so I can do shout outs in multiple chats at once. I wonder if that would work. Who knows? Alright. Anyway. Weighting sufficientarianism, distributive goals, and other distributive goals. Okay. The second distinction between weighted sufficientarianism views concerns the distributive goals that providing enough is weighted against. As Knight defines it, weighted sufficientarianism holds that providing enough is a non-lexically prior distributive goal. Yeah, so yeah, it's not an absolute in the weighted version of things. So if you're weighting stuff, you don't always have to provide enough to all the people all the time. This suggests that weighted sufficientarianism weighs various distributive goals, one of which is providing enough. Lux sufficientarianism, for example, gives weighted priority to providing enough, increasing overall advantage, benefiting the worse off, and being sensitive to individual responsibility. But of course, weighted sufficientarianism could weigh other distributive goals as well, for example, equality, or weigh only some of these distributive goals, resulting in distinct types of weighted sufficientarianism. Yeah. Weighting different sufficientarianism sufficientarian goals. Yeah, this is killing me. The third distinction between weighted sufficientarian views concerns how they specify priority among different sufficientarian goals. Following Knight, I started this article by saying that sufficientarianism posits providing enough, or as close to enough as is possible, as an important distributive goal. But unlike the singular goal suggests, this definition entails two distinct sufficientarian goals. The first goal, that is providing enough, is concerned with bringing people above the threshold. The second goal, for example, that is, providing as close to enough as is possible, is concerned with improving people's lives below that threshold. This suggests a third way in which sufficientarian views can be weighted, namely by specifying weighted rather than lexical priority among these two sufficientarian goals. Okay, see, now you're, like, this is the thing. Once you have lines in the sand, like, this is what being poor is, then there's the question, do you want to get people just above the being poor line, or do you want to make the people below the poor line have a much better life, even if it doesn't get them above the poor line? So it's like, what counts as sufficient at that point? Knight implicitly acknowledges the distinction between different sufficientarian goals when he says that where it is possible to provide enough for all is concerned with sufficientarianism is concerned with providing as close to enough as is possible. Put differently, if providing enough for all is impossible, then sufficientarianism cares about providing as close to enough as is possible. In doing so, this view gives providing enough lexical priority over providing as close to enough as is possible. However, there are at least two interpretations of this idea that providing enough has lexical priority over providing as close to enough as is possible, neither of which is particularly plausible. Yeah, so I guess, like, if someone is all the way down here in the world, you want to get them up to here if possible. But maybe you can't get them all the way up, maybe you can only get them a bit. So the question is getting them this amount better than getting someone who only needs a little bit more above the threshold for what you think is, like, getting by? So you could improve someone's life a whole lot, but it really doesn't make them they're still going to be poor. But like, or you could get someone out of being poor, but you only have to increase a little bit, which is better at that point. I don't know. So the first interpretation, called this the all or nothing interpretation, holds that if providing enough for all is impossible, that's getting everyone over the threshold, then sufficientarianism is concerned with providing as close to enough as is possible. There are two problems with this interpretation. To start with, in practice, it leaves little room for providing enough for all. In circumstances of scarcity and with a threshold at even a modest level, few distributions will provide enough for everyone. In practice, then, the all-or-nothing interpretation basically focuses on providing as close to enough as is possible. It leaves little room for the idea that providing enough is a valuable goal. Thanks for being here, Saint Just. I appreciate you stopping by. Yeah, so I guess these are all like distinctions. How much you're moving people up, if you're trying to get people over the threshold, if you can only get a few people over the threshold, as opposed to getting a lot of people, a lot better than where they used to be. Who knows? But again, it's like, yeah, do you really need this? Do we really need this theoretically? I don't know. Like, I'm not sure. Now, if you're just trying to say there's lots of stuff to discuss here, yeah, there's lots of stuff to discuss here. The question is, are we going to throw out any of these ideas? Because in practice, it's not really going to, you're going to try to do what you can in practice. And it says this paper is annoying me so much. It's based on imaginaries, abstract economies, and the idea of what is basic standard of living. This is not a subjective matter. Yeah, you said it better than I did. That's the problem here. This is way too abstract, and you're saying, all right, well, when you've got different thresholds and you've got different way of interpreting the thresholds, it's yeah, no shit. But what does that do for anyone? If you have a threshold, there's different ways of dealing with it. Sure, but that's not a big deal. It's not a deep thought at this point. But okay, that's fine. Maybe like I was just saying, maybe that's not the point here. Maybe what they're trying to do here is they're saying, look, we're just muddying the water a little bit because you can't make any big claims in this area because there's different ways of interpreting everything. All right. Furthermore, the author says, the all-or-nothing interpretation neglects that it is intrinsically valuable if someone has enough, which many Sufficientarians consider to be a core element of Sufficientarianism. Yeah, so the idea that you're getting one person past the threshold there. And says it's like saying, if we make everyone be friends, we can have peace. Then what? That's obvious, but it takes more than just wishing. Yeah, it's a little bit too... what would you call this? A little too abstract at this point. So it's yes, but there's nothing to be actually argued over. It would be nice if everyone was friendly. It's so what? Okay. The all or nothing interpretation recognizes the instrumental value of someone having enough, for example, if that benefits those below the threshold, and because it suggests that person should receive lower or zero sufficientarian concern. It also recognizes the intrinsic value of everyone having enough because that is the intrinsic value it gives lexical priority to. However, it does not attach intrinsic value to someone having enough. For that reason, Sufficientarians should reject the all-or-nothing interpretation of the idea that providing enough has lexical priority over providing as close to enough as is possible. Yeah, this is the thing. This is what you're saying, this is what I'm saying. What is the actual value of getting someone past sort of the threshold as being able to get by on their own? Does that raise everyone else up? Does that what's the value there? They're saying, look, this is a little too simplistic even for them, but it's, again, there's way more complicated things because people are not just going past the threshold. They're doing things in getting past the threshold. So yeah. On the second interpretation of the idea that providing enough has a lexical priority over providing as close to enough as is possible, call this the head count interpretation. Sufficientarianism says that if providing enough for more people is impossible, then Sufficientarianism is concerned with providing as close to enough as is possible. This means that we must maximize the number of people above the threshold, and only if we have done so should we be concerned with the distribution below the threshold. And says, the World Bank and other institutions have set up the concept of poverty line for a damn reason, is material, objective, and measurable. Yeah. So that's the problem here. This is a little too abstract. They're talking about these, how to deal with thresholds without understanding what is going into the threshold. This is just a abstract threshold talk here. All right, that's good, but in practice, it's not going to matter. If you want to do the metaphysics of thresholds, what it is to go over limits, that's fine, but it's just hard to connect with reality here. Yeah. Okay, so unlike the all or nothing interpretation, the head count interpretation recognizes the intrinsic value of someone having enough. So this is the issue. It says there's intrinsic value of someone having enough. That's nice. There is no intrinsic value of someone having enough. What is that objectively? What does that do? Yes, it might be having enough, but that doesn't actually mean anything. This is the thing. What the hell is intrinsic value of having enough? That doesn't actually mean anything on the ground. So like this is the problem. It sounds great, but it doesn't have any objective like basis in reality. Okay. The problem with this interpretation, however, is that it fails to capture the value of bringing people closer to the threshold, even if they cannot be brought above the threshold. For instance, if the threshold is at 10 units, it may require pursuing a distribution 10-1-1-1 over B999 because in A, more people are above the threshold, even if in B, the worse off are much better off than in A. This is seen as a crucial objection to sufficientarianism, and I believe rightly so. For that reason, the headcount interpretation must be rejected as well. Again, in the abstract, yes, but if you can get one person over the threshold, will they be able to pull other people with them afterwards? Like, that's the sort of thing, once you get like a community up, the community will run itself. And so it's like, you don't need to get everyone out of like a situation. You might only need to get a few people, and then they can pull other people with them because, people got family, they got friends, and they will help out. Once there's like a business in the area, a lot of times, the business will create, if you get like like an anchor business in, I think that's what it's called. You get like a nice restaurant or like a car dealership a lot of times here in the US. What happens is other people, systemic, yes. Other businesses will grow around that business, and all of a sudden the whole region gets uplifted. So you may only need a few people to be helped to then do it. So like this A situation right here, where you've got 10-1-1-1, maybe that's sufficient to getting all the ones up a whole lot after. But if you get B999, but there is no like, then everyone will eventually drop back down because there's no one that's actually making it on their own. So it's like, again, it's like the abstraction here seems to miss out on certain like real issues that when you have actual people, what happens with their interaction. Okay. Author says, in my view, this suggests that the most plausible type of sufficientarianism posits non-lexical priority between the two sufficientarianism distributive goals, that is, providing enough and providing as close to enough as is possible. Such weighted sufficientarianism gives weighted priority to maximizing the number of people above the threshold and to benefiting those below it. This, too, is a way in which sufficientarianism can be weighted. Yes, if you can get people over the threshold and then raise everyone else up, that's great. But that's also just a different kind of threshold. It's like, now we're just measuring things differently. Now, that's the problem here. If you say, okay, we've got this sophisticated sufficientarianism, if you just look at it a different way, then you're just measuring it differently, and then that's all it is. It's a measurement question. It's just an interpretation question. So I don't know if, like, actually there's been any theoretical progress here. You're just saying I have different weights on my goals. That's it. Yeah. Okay. Incidentally, so far I've only discussed priority among sufficientarian goals pertaining to a single threshold. However, sufficientarianism also entails different sufficientarian goals if it posits multiple thresholds, such as the multi-threshold sufficientarian view I will defend in sections 4 and 5. For example, suppose a sufficientarian view posits a low threshold T- and a high threshold T+. In that case, providing enough can mean providing enough to meet T- or providing enough to meet T+, and similarly for providing as close to enough as is possible. Yeah, so this is going to be a min-max problem. You have to like take minimum amount of resources to max out whatever your different goals are, and then you have a weighting between them. That's it. Okay, and these different goals can clash. For instance, if two people are below T- and we face the choice between either bringing both people above T- or only one of them above T+. To settle such a question requires a specific prioritization among different sufficientarian goals. See, again, it's not going to be sufficientarian goals. It's going to be what actually is plausible in real life. Like, are they both going to die if they're below T-? Or is one person going to die if they're below T- and the other one just gets above T-? Or if you get one person above T+, will that actually pull the other T- with them? Like, this is, it's not the sufficientarian goals. What's going to happen is, what kind of society are you dealing with? All right, to summarize, I've distinguished 3 ways in which sufficientarianism can be a weighted view, namely by specifying weighted priority. 1, between some or all relevant distributive goals. 2, between sufficientarian distributive goals and other distributive goals, or among sufficientarian and distributive goals. Yeah, so you mix and match your goals. Fine. 4, desiderata for distributive patterns. My aim is to offer the most plausible sufficientarian responses to the excessiveness objection. Knight ends up rejecting weighted sufficientarianism, including Lux sufficientarianism, because it still forgoes large advantages above the threshold for the sake of providing enough. He defends prioritarianism instead as a more plausible distributive pattern. I will argue, however, that there is a weighted sufficientarianism view not discussed by Knight and not weighted in the sense he defines it that meets the excessiveness objection and is preferable to Lux sufficientarianism and prioritarianism. In this section, I will list 4 desiderata that this view must meet, and I distill from Knight's discussion of the excessiveness objection. I then introduce and defend my proposal in sections 4 to 5. Knight excessiveness objection encompasses 4 different objections, each of which holds that lexical sufficientarianism requires too much by lexically prioritizing providing enough or as close to enough as is possible over other distributive goals. First, the objection about the magnitude of advantage holds that lexical sufficientarianism objectionably forgoes large advantages above the threshold for the sake of minor benefits below it. And says, this sounds to me like fancy talk for the discussion about welfare systems. Fuck the poor who depend on the system and don't work versus people need fair wages. You know, and it goes nowhere, it's just talk. Yeah, that's fair. Like I was saying, this is not doing it for me because it just sounds like different ways of interpreting thresholds, which is fine in the abstract, but they're obviously talking about like real world application, and it's like, that's nice, but like the abstract understanding of like when getting someone over a poverty threshold, it's like that doesn't matter. So yeah. Now the question you just brought up also is this saying, well, what should we prioritize, like welfare versus fair wages? Yeah, this may just be trying to get there, but it doesn't even look like it's gonna get there at this point. It's like, well, what do you prioritize? And then you could say wages, or you could say welfare systems, and then it's again, how did they decide here? It's like, they're not making enough. They're not making a claim about what to do. They're just saying, well, here's how we balance the different priorities, and balancing the different priorities is not an answer. That's just restating the question that you have to balance the priorities, but that's not a solution. That's just a restatement of the problem. Yeah. Okay. So you have to look at so the author is now talking about, you have to look at how much you're benefiting rich people. Second, the objection about the number of beneficiaries holds that the lexical sufficientarianism objectively forgoes benefits to many people of the threshold for the sake of benefits to a single individual below it. Yeah, so it's like, are you helping lots of people or just one person that needed the help? Or you could benefit lots of people a lot, or just one person a little bit. Again, in reality, what's the difference here? Third, the objection about responsibility and desert holds that lexical sufficientarianism objectively considers people's actions and choices irrelevant in distributing benefits and burdens. Yeah, so again, is there any responsibility here? And says, all of this is like an introduction paragraph to economic papers. It's going nowhere and I'm complaining a lot. Sorry, haha. Yeah, but it's fair. Like, this is philosophy. They're trying to outline the structure of the problem here. The problem is, I don't think that the background theory is good enough here. They're just outlining again what it is to have a threshold and go above or below it or nearby it. It's like, okay, yeah, above, below, nearby, and then you've got like different gradations therein, but who cares? Like, that's fine. We know this. So it's like, yeah, it's not going anywhere at the moment. But that's not to say it's bad. Like, I don't know what this area is like. Maybe they need a little bit of theory to get people off the ground, but still. Yeah, it's well cemented in other areas. Yeah, this is not that's just the question. Like, did this need to be written in this area? I don't know. Okay, fourth, the above threshold distribution objection holds that lexical sufficientarianism objectively disregards any type of inequality or unfairness above the threshold for the sake of promoting sufficiency. Yeah, so do we completely ignore that we could maybe help people, even if they're not, like, they already have enough, maybe we could help them a huge amount to get to, like, way better. And then again, would that raise everyone else up? Like, a rising tide raises all ships. Even if people already were above water, maybe, they could help everyone else up too. So again, this is let's give rich people tax breaks because they'll help everyone. Is that really a feasible thing? Now, maybe it does help. Maybe there are people, if you give them a little bit more help, they'll help everyone else. But, Again, this is the rich people getting more tax breaks. Is that really a good idea? Okay. In light of these four objections, can we formulate four desiderata distributive patterns must meet? These desiderata are the following. Multiple of advantage. Magnitude of advantage, excuse me. A distributive pattern should not forego large advantages above the threshold for the sake of providing enough. 2. Number of beneficiaries. A distributive pattern should not forego advantages to many people above the threshold for the sake of providing enough. 3. Responsibility and desert. A distributive pattern should allow insufficiency resulting from responsibility or desert. 4. Above threshold distribution. A distributive pattern should be responsive to the distribution above threshold advantages even when not everyone has enough. Yeah, and I think this is the issue. This is now getting into like rich people apologetics. If the people are saying, oh no, the poor people are, irresponsible and they're wasting the money and that's why they're poor, we shouldn't give them money. You should give money to the rich people because they will raise everyone up. That's exactly what's happening here. Like we're saying, all right, these people were irresponsible and the theory should be, our theory should, pay attention to that. And then like we should help lots of rich people because, they'll help everybody. But again, does this really make sense? But are these things that we could take into consideration? Yes, these are things that could be taken into consideration. Are they a good idea? I don't know, but they're saying we need to at least have them built into the theory. Okay. Knight suggests that Lux Sufficientarianism meets these desiderata better than lexical Sufficientarianism because it gives weighted priority to providing enough, increasing overall advantage, benefiting the worse off, and being sensitive to individual responsibility. However, as mentioned, Knight himself already raises an objection to Lux Sufficientarianism and other weighted Sufficientarian views, namely that they remain vulnerable to a version of the objection about the magnitude of advantage. He argues, quote, consider a crude version of weighted Sufficientarianism that says that 1 unit of above threshold benefit has a moral value of 1, while 1 unit of below threshold benefit has a moral value of 101. This implies that if we can have individual A at 200 units, B at 99 units, or both at 100 units, we should bring about the latter. According to the view under consideration, the first world has a moral value of 2,199, and the second world has a moral value of 20,200. So it's like, yeah, in the end, like if you just have like you can rejigger the numbers, and then you're saying, well, this is what we should put. But this is one of the things that gets me in decision theory too. What the fuck is 1 unit of above threshold benefit? This sort of thing just is like kills me. What is above 1 unit of benefit, and what is a moral value of 1? How do you ever put a moral value of 1 on anything? This has a moral value of 1. This has a moral value of 2. This is a moral value of 1.5. This is nonsense. One of my favorite things that happened actually in Philosophy Roulette was I had someone in chat that was kind of new, and I was saying, hey Valpo, what's going on? Welcome in. Yeah, I know, rare daytime stream for me. Like sunlight as opposed to my lights are on actually on my face. For instance, the paper I mentioned in this abstract, it resumes this whole debate. Yeah, so that's the thing. It's like this is done. So yeah, Anne's abstract. Mainstream economists usually identify fundamental conflict between efficiency and justice in resource allocation. Markets are generally considered an efficient allocation tool, but create unequal results. Corresponding governmental redistribution shall equalize some of these market results, but leads to inefficiency due to disincentives both for net payers and net receivers. Consequently, this paper analyzes the impact of social inequality on distributive choices in an experimental. Yeah, exactly. People know this stuff. And this sort of thing annoys me in philosophy, where we're putting random numbers on your moral values to say, this theory is better because, it comes out better. And like I was just saying, old story where I was saying, something was like 3 money, like they were using money. And they were using the, the money symbol, the U.S. money, like an S through it. And someone was like, oh, no, that's a variable symbol. I was like, I don't think so. I think it's 3 money. And so they were annoyed because I kept, saying something ungrammatical. This is worth 3 money, and that's worth 4 money. And it turned out, no, they were doing this sort of thing. It wasn't even money. It was 1 moral value of whatever it was. It's like, yeah, you deserve to be made fun of a little bit when you're trying to put a moral value of 1 where that has no basis, none whatsoever in reality. Now, I know that if you're going to make a model, you have to, put some numerical value on stuff, but if you're relying on the numerical value for anything theoretic, it's just bunk. Because it begs the question, you already decided what the moral value is. And so philosophy like this actually really gets my goat. A lot of stuff like this really, I think it's just a dodge. It's bad philosophy. And we had like a paper a few weeks ago where we're saying like, big numbers and small numbers, and you multiply this, and since you're multiplying it by a very big number, there's a philosophical conclusion. It's like, no, asshole. You're setting it up that way to get the conclusion you want, but the multiplication has no basis in reality. None. It has to do with your prior probability of stuff, if you can go Bayesian about this, but there is no prior probability of setting up a moral value of 1. None. So that's you're already begged the question. So that's the philosophical criticism. Anne's got the sociological and political criticism in chat. Okay. According to Knight, weighted sufficientarianism cannot take the magnitude of advantage into account because in cases like this, it still forgoes large advantages above the threshold for the sake of minor benefits below it. See, again, this whole sentence right here. It's like, yeah, you've set it up that way. You didn't have to actually do the multiplication, but whatever. Anne says, agree, it's X pages of grandiose words to debate something that is very bloody obvious at this point in his 2023 paper. So lame. Yeah. But again, who knows? Knight, forthcoming, therefore proposes that weighted sufficientarianism must be combined with weightings that do not give too much weight to below threshold benefits, but maintains that prioritarianism is better able to do this and rejects weighted sufficientarianism for that reason. You're going to shut up? Nah, it's fine. People deserve to get a little bit of shit. This is already published. What do they care? Though I agree that distributive patterns should not give too much weight to below threshold benefits, giving too much weight, that is, of course, wrong by definition, I reject Knight's proposal for how sufficientarians should accommodate for that desideratum. Knight proposes that instead of giving lexical priority to below threshold benefits, such benefits should only have extra weight compared to above threshold benefits. Oh yeah, Valpo. Just so you know, I'm also dual streaming to YouTube now since Twitch allows that. So I'm actually also on YouTube. So if anything's funky with stream, let me know. I know I've got a bunch of dropped frames every so often. I'm not too fussed about dropped frames, but like whatever. I'm still getting it says I'm getting 30 something frames per second, which is okay for my content. Where was I? Okay, however, the author will argue that below threshold benefits should have both extra weight and lexical priority. More precisely, they should have extra weight compared with benefits just above that threshold, but lexical priority over benefits well above that threshold. I developed this idea in the next section. In doing so, I will argue that such sufficientarianism can meet the 4 desiderata listed above and is preferable to both luck, sufficientarianism, and prioritarianism. Yeah, exactly. So we'll see. I don't know what the reach is of the my live stream stuff. It says I got 1 viewer over on YouTube at the moment, which is probably one of you people in chat right here, but still. I mean, I guess that's nice, so I thank you, whoever you are, on the YouTube side of things. A proposal, partially weighted multi-threshold sufficientarianism. I will defend partially weighted multi-threshold sufficientarianism, for short PWMS. Oh dear, it's like, yes, congratulations, author. You've redefined a new standard, just like all the other new standards in the past. PWMS is a sufficientarian view with multiple thresholds, which gives weighted priority to benefits directly above and below each of its thresholds, but gives providing enough to meet the lowest threshold, lexically priority over providing benefits above the highest threshold. Yeah, so again, the people at the bottom get whatever they need, and then it gets graded as you get up. That's it. You've got it's a gradation. In this section, I explain PWMS in more detail and compare it with other sufficientarian views in the literature. PWMS has multiple thresholds, and importantly, its highest threshold is considerably higher than its lowest threshold. Here I have no particular threshold levels in mind, but we can assume, for example, that the lowest threshold indicates the level above which people can meet their basic needs, and that the highest threshold indicates the level above which people have more than enough to live a very good life. I will refer to these thresholds as T minus and T plus, where T minus refers to the lowest threshold and T plus refers to the highest threshold. Further, PWMS is a partially weighted view which holds that providing enough must be non-lexically weighted with some distributive goals, but has lexical priority over other distributive goals. More specifically, PWMS holds that providing enough to meet T minus has weighted priority over providing enough to meet T plus. Similarly, it holds that providing enough to meet T plus has weighted priority over providing benefits above T plus. This means then that if sufficiently large benefits are at stake to a sufficiently large group of people, providing benefits above T plus can outweigh providing enough to meet T plus. You know, it's like really, does like just you giving a lot of rich people a lot of money can help out, does more than, you know, helping someone just get rich. I mean, I guess it's technically possible. It just seems very weird at a certain point, especially because when people have done studies on this, there's a certain threshold of money where more money doesn't really matter. Like you get to a point where you're comfortable, and then after that, money starts to mean less to you. It's like you're just doing, and at that point, you're not worried about stuff anymore, and like that's okay. If everyone got there, that'd be great, but like we're nowhere near that at this point in society. So like all this, you know, we're giving the people above that are already wealthy even more money because it might actually do them more good. That's just pie in the sky. Okay, likewise, providing enough to meet T plus can outweigh providing enough to meet T minus, and similarly for providing as close to enough as is possible for each of these thresholds. However, providing enough to meet T minus has lexical priority over providing benefits above T plus. And so if we face the choice between providing enough to meet T minus or providing benefits above T plus, providing enough to meet T minus has lexical priority. Consequently, benefits above T plus can never outweigh benefits below T minus. Yeah, so there's a cutoff. You just can't give rich people any more until everyone else can eat. That seems normal. The possibility of giving lexical priority to benefits below T minus in the way PWMS does is neglected both by Knight and others in the literature. To the best of my knowledge, it is simply taken for granted that if providing enough to meet some threshold has lexical priority, it must have lexical priority over everything that happens above that threshold. And similarly, that if benefits above the threshold are lexically outweighed by below threshold benefits, then any benefit below the threshold lexically outweighs benefits above it. So a whole lot of references here. What I suggest here, however, is different. I propose to give providing enough to meet T minus lexical priority only over what happens well above the threshold, namely T plus, and consequently that benefits T plus are only lexically outweighed by providing enough below T minus. All right. So here's what's happening here. Once everyone, you can't take away money from like getting people to eat and give it to rich people. But this person's running triage. This is saying you can allow certain people to die if it helps the society get like enough people over like a threshold that, you know, a lot of people will benefit. So this is basically triage at this point. We are not giving rich people anything else, but like we're going to triage what we do have and say certain among you, you're going to die and that's okay. But that's because we're going to help out a lot of other people that need to, you know, have a leg up, even if those people weren't going to die. So, okay. But like, yeah, this is again, the, trying to explain why it's okay to let certain people die. And that's what's happening. All right. It is not difficult to see why single-threshold sufficientarian views adhere to the classical idea about lexical priority. If there is only one threshold, and if benefits below that threshold have priority, then such benefits have priority over all benefits above it. Giving lexical priority to some but not all benefits above that threshold is only possible if multiple thresholds are in play. But PWMS is, of course, not the first multi-threshold sufficientarianism in the literature. It may therefore be worthwhile to briefly explain what my proposal adds to this literature and how it differs from other multi-threshold sufficientarian views. Okay, so this might actually be interesting because, as we were saying in chat, doesn't seem like there's anything new here. It really don't. Consider first the view defended by Ben Bagji. The multi-level doctrine of sufficiency, the anti-egalitarian priority view, benefiting people matters more the more priority lines or thresholds there are above the utility level at which these people are. The more of these people there are, the greater size of the benefit in question. Okay, so you've got more people, and then you have to deal with like the more people at that point. So this is doing some Like all of these are doing very consequentialist math on number of people and number of benefits. Ben-Bagji goes on to explain the view I recommend is non-absolutist, and absolutism is clearly counterintuitive. It claims that a slight increase to one person just below the threshold outweighs huge increases to any number of people just above the threshold. Unlike Ben-Bagji's multi-level doctrine of sufficiency, PWMS is explicitly absolutist and that gives lexical priority to benefits below T-. But even though it is an absolutist view, it does not give lexical priority to benefits below T- over all other benefits, but only over those above T+. PWMS differs from Ben-Bagji's view in being absolutist, though not in the sense Ben-Bagji describes. Yeah, so they've got a cutoff. They've got an upper cutoff also. Ben-Bagji does not have an upper cutoff. This person has an upper cutoff where above that, those people don't get anything if other people are starving. Okay, now consider Husby's defense of sufficientarianism. Husby has defended two versions of multi-threshold sufficientarianism, both of which are absolutist views. Both views say that benefits below the highest threshold have lexical priority over benefits above that threshold. However, the first view, which he defends in Sufficiency, Restated, and Defended, says that it is valuable for people to reach the highest threshold. Whereas the second view, which he defends in Sufficiency and Threshold Question, rejects that it is valuable that people reach the threshold. To put this view in a more familiar sufficientarian phrasing, the first view says that both the positive thesis, which says that it is morally important that people have enough, and the negative thesis, which says that further distribution is not required once everyone has enough, refer to the highest threshold. However, the second view says that these theses refer to different thresholds. The positive thesis refers to the lowest threshold, and the negative thesis to the highest threshold. Though my proposal shares a commitment to absolutism with both of Husby's views, it differs from them by rejecting that lexical priority should be given to any benefit below the highest threshold T+. Whereas Husby adheres to the classical idea of lexical priority modeled after the role it plays in single threshold views, I propose to take advantage of the possibilities that multi-threshold sufficientarianism offers in how it gives lexical priority to benefits below T-. I live in your walls. Who's this? I don't know. You're in my walls. Hi, I'm Nogre0. That's me. What we do here is we read philosophy and discuss it. So what we're doing here is we're going over a position. Yes, the philosopher. We are talking about like how to distribute resources in society, and when people are starving, how do we actually allocate it to them, especially if the resources could be put to really good use other places. So like, do we save everybody or do we only save some people sometimes? And this person's arguing we only save some of the people some of the time, and we always use the money if it was going to go to very wealthy people, but then other times we triage and be like, you can die, but you can live and you can die because we're going to really help lots of people. We don't save anybody? No, that's not fair. We try to, help people out in society. I mean, why would you say we don't save anybody? Like, that's silly. It's like, that person, everyone gets to die. We don't have any clean water in society. Everyone just gets like polluted water. It doesn't matter. You all can die. It's like, nah. We try to, I like civilization. Like, we get cool things like internet when you have civilization. Another difference is that, unlike Husby's views, PWMS is agnostic whether it is morally important that people can reach the highest threshold, and is equally agnostic about whether further distribution is required once everyone has reached that threshold. Yeah, but these thresholds are going to be sliding, like they're going to move with society too. So this is weird. Like the idea that like you're not going to move your thresholds, like once everyone has enough, the threshold is going to, for what having more is going to be something. Social Darwinism for the win? Yeah, that's probably wrong. There's more going on than just like, oh yeah, these people like failed. It's like, really? It's like we haven't like, killed lots of people for really shitty reasons, and like that's really shitty of us. It's like, no, we definitely killed lots of people for shitty reasons. Like, and so might makes right. It's like, nah, that's crappy. Okay, but if PWMS is specified such that it says that it is important that people reach the highest threshold, then it does not have the counterintuitive implication pointed out by Ben-Bagji that slight increases to someone just below T+ outweigh huge increases to people just above it. You're all for might makes right? All right, good luck with that. I mean, most people don't do that. I mean, then again, it depends what you mean by right. What is right in that case? Like, if you're doing, like, the religious thing, like what God says is right, and then, of course, you're doing God's work. Well, yeah, I know Nietzsche's work. But, I mean, I don't know if Nietzsche was always, like, what might makes right. Is like, you want to always be increasing your own sort of kind of life, the way you live. You're supposed to have, like, be like a unique, interesting, and like overcoming yourself. I mean, does that mean you get to stomp on everybody else in the world? Well, if that is what overcoming means, like, maybe, but like that's not like necessarily meaning you have to stomp on everybody else. And it says, I just called my dad, who has a PhD in economics and has been a professor for 30 years, and he's never heard of this term sufficientarianism. Yeah. I mean, what I kind of feel like is that this is like a corner of philosophy where these people have been arguing with themselves and have not gotten out of their little bubble in a while. I didn't read all of his books, maybe two. No, I definitely did not read all of them. No. I mean, the fact that you're going to read all of Nietzsche is like, that's not trivial. It's a bunch of stuff. And secondly, the idea that he is the same philosopher all the time is also not going to be 100%. So it's like people argue over this, sure. But no, I'm not a Nietzsche scholar, and I don't even think I've read all of his main works. No, or at least not in a long. I've read some of them, but not in a long time, and then parts of others. So it's like, yeah, you're a late Nietzschean. See, okay, so you may know more than I do, very easily. But again, just because you're taking Nietzsche's view on it, that doesn't make Nietzsche like the 100% correct on everything either. Like, Nietzsche is not a word of God. I don't even think Nietzsche would call himself word of God. Yeah. Yeah, I really feel like this paper is sort of like in their own little corner. And they've been arguing with themselves and have not poked their head out in a while, which is a little bit unfortunate, but yeah. Let's see, we're almost done though. So we're at section 5, and we only got 2 or 3 more pages. So let's get this done. Okay. He did, haha. His last letter, he called himself a lot. Yeah, see, that's not good either. That would be grounds for reductio at that point. It's like, if you start thinking you're God, you got problems, my friend. Like, I'm sorry, Fred. You got problems if you think you're God. So, like, at that point, it's from Dionysus to the crucified one. Interesting. Okay. If he did do that, and I would take that as reason to not take his view seriously at that point, because it means he's a little, got himself you think you're a little bit bigger than you are. It ain't none of us God here. So, yeah. Okay. In defense of partially weighted multi-threshold sufficientarianism, let us assume that, except for being a partially weighted multi-threshold view, PWMS is equivalent to Lux Sufficientarianism in all other respects. This entails the following, as Knight defines it. Lux Sufficientarianism says that... Oh, he was big, I'm sure. And says this is the type of academic I hate, the types that spend all their time in the office writing, having conversation with other office academics who only want to show off amongst themselves while having zero connection with the real world. Ugh. Yeah, and that's the issue here. I'm happy this person got the paper out. Like, it's not like the worst paper in the world. It just seems very sort of insular, that they're arguing things that have been argued in other places much more, it's been argued a lot of times in a lot of other places. They put it all together for their little area, but again, what does that what value is that adding, in the sense that this has all been said before? Maybe it just hasn't been said right here, but again, you're not adding a whole lot to the discussion overall. All right, so here's the quote. A distribution is more just the more it A, provides enough or close enough as possible, B, increases the overall amount of advantage, C, improves the condition of the worse off, and D, makes distributions sensitive to individual responsibility. Yeah, zero value. Knight then categorizes the different elements of that view. A is the distinctively sufficientarian aspect of the view, while B through D ensure that the view accommodates the concerns with magnitude of advantage, number of beneficiaries, above threshold distribution, distributive distribution, and responsibility and desert that standard sufficientarianism neglects. Okay. End quote. Here, then, I will assume that, like Lux Sufficientarianism, PWMS endorses A through D, What sets PWMS apart from Lux Sufficientarianism is that it adds that providing enough below T minus lexically outweighs for concerns for B through D above T plus. Yeah, so this is it. This is the one thing they said. It says, if people are starving, we need to help them out. That's the grand thing. They made up a whole system and say, look, the people at the bottom can't be hurt by helping the people at the very top. Never heard that before, I'm sure. As a result, increases in overall advantage, improving the condition of the worse off, and individual responsibility and desert cannot justify benefiting those above T+, if doing so comes at a cost for those below T-. At the same time, however, these concerns can justify benefiting those between T- and T+, even if that comes at a cost for those below T-. And see, this is the other problem with this paper. This is going to be a sliding window, the people between T+ and T-. And so it'd be very easy to move the T+ so high in your world that only the itty bitty top people, the billionaires, the multi-billionaires are above T+. And so this is making it way too easy in like the sort of the theoretical view to like help out the very wealthy, because, oh no, they're not the Bill Gates of the world. We're not helping Bill Gates. We're helping people below that. But if you set the T+ limit of people who, are like super wealthy so high, then like it kind of turns into the shitty situation again. So this is making it, even though it feels like the author here has good intentions, it's making it abusable. This sort of system is very abusable because you can set the T+ threshold for like the tippy top super high. Knight argues that Lux Sufficientarianism and other weighted Sufficientarian views still fall prey to the objection about magnitude of advantage. For example, they prefer distributions of like 100-100 over distribution 299 if, say, every 1 unit benefit above the threshold has more value of 1 and every 1 unit benefit below the threshold has more value of 101. This implies that a single benefit to one individual justifies a loss of 100 units to another individual, which violates magnitude of advantage. Again, this is just not adding anything, it's just putting math on it. And that annoys me. However, PWMS also has this implication, especially if the benefits in question are above the T+. However, I consider this to be a strength of PWMS. This is because unlike Lux Sufficientarianism and prioritarianism, it means that PWMS is not vulnerable to the opposite version of the objection about the magnitude of advantage. The lower the comparative weight of benefits below T-, the sooner benefits to those above T- outweigh the benefits to those below T-. For example, if those who already live very good lives benefit enough, this can outweigh benefits to the worst off far below T-, no matter how many people live below T-, and no matter how much benefit they could receive instead. This, it seems to me, is morally problematic. PWMS avoids this by giving lexical priority to providing enough to meet T- over providing more for those above T+. Again, yeah, this is all how you set this up. Like, you have to help out the people who are starving according to who actually has plenty. But who has plenty is going to be, again, something arguable, and very rich people like, oh no, I'm not the super wealthy, I may have enough, but I can do more. It's like, yeah, but this is abusable systems, and it's like, yeah, this is trying to make it very reasonable, like, oh yeah, we're receptive to your concerns, but again, I don't love these abusable systems. It's too separate from reality. Okay. Knight might, of course, respond that such lexical priority invites the excessiveness objection. However, because of how it gives a lexical priority to the providing enough below T-, if you're helping out the starving people, you're not being excessive. PWMS significantly mitigates the problem that lexical priority raises compared to with lexical sufficientarianism. Moreover, by accepting some form of lexical priority, it avoids preferring marginal benefits to those who already live very good lives over significant benefits to those below the lowest threshold. It does so by saying that providing enough to meet T- is not given lexical priority over everything else, but only over benefits above T+. Some, but not all, below threshold benefits have lexical priority. More precisely, only benefits below T- have lexical priority, namely over benefits above T+. Let me end by discussing 3 objections to PWMS. The first is that it still forgoes advantages to many people above the threshold for the sake of providing enough. For instance, an extra year of high quality life for each of 1 billion people above T+ would be outweighed by a minor utility gain for someone one below T minus. I grant that this is a consequence of PWMS if such circumstances would arise, yet I believe proponents of PWMS should stand their ground here. A core insight of sufficientarianism is that people should be able to meet some modest threshold. PWMS gives this goal lexical priority not over all other distributive goals, but over some of them, namely those pertaining to people above some high threshold. Whatever objection about foregoing large advantages can be leveled against PWMS, they apply less to PWMS than to lexical sufficientarianism. Yeah, and you can see the kind of thoughts going on in like this area where they're saying, oh wow, rich people and whatever, like maybe we could help them out. See, these are utilitarian fantasies. So it's like you're getting like these sort of deontological, they're trying to split the difference. Deontology at the very poor end and utilitarianism at the very high end, and it's like, okay. Furthermore, the circumstances under which PWMS is supposed to give guidance seldom resemble those fantastic circumstances. Yeah, so again, they know. This is sort of ridiculous shit. As I write this, hundreds of millions of people around the world live in extreme poverty. It is hard to imagine policies or actions that would benefit only a few of these people at the expense of billions of people above T+. Finally, depending on the level of the threshold, there simply are not a billion people above T+. Again, this is what I'm finding so unrealistic. T+ can move. This person has good intentions, but I feel like this person's a nice neoliberal person, maybe a little conservative even. They're like, oh no, we have to do the best we can for the poors. Let's do the best we can for the poors. And the rich people, they're fine. It's like, yeah, but that's coming from a very sort of privileged point where you can set this cutoff where, oh, we know what we need to do and like we can sort of triage how it goes. It's like, I don't know. I just don't know. It's like this is just sort of getting very neoliberally garbage feel for me. All right, for example, the number of ultra-high net worth individuals, which are people with a net worth of over US 30 million, including their primary residence, is estimated to be around 300,000 in 2020. If T+ tracks such fortunes, such cases cannot occur. Again, see, yeah, it's like, who makes the cutoff at $30 million? Who really makes the cutoff at $30 million for T+? Why not $5 million? I mean, if you go into our buddy Aris's stream, he makes the cutoff at like 200,000. Like if you have more than $200,000 in the bank and you have a house or whatever, you don't need any more really. Maybe it's a few million now, but 30 million? Yeah, maybe. But again, who really is the rich person here? The second objection is that as a multi-threshold view, PWMS requires an arbitrary prioritization of the interests of those just below each of the thresholds compared to those just above each of them, unless there is a compelling rationale for each threshold. This is a greater justificatory burden than facing single threshold views, such as Lux Sufficientarianism, because it requires a defense of multiple thresholds. I have discussed the arbitrariness objection to Sufficientarianism and other problems related to setting thresholds extensively elsewhere, and I will not say much about this here. But multi-threshold views as such are no novelty in debates about sufficientarianism. We draw on these existing views to determine the level of the thresholds. Okay, yeah, so it's like go reference somebody else. Fine. The third objection is that PWMS cannot accommodate for concerns about luck and responsibility. For instance, suppose a vindictive person below T- releases a dangerous chemical that takes a year off the lives of each of the people above T+. We can now use a different chemical to either restore that year for the billion or give a brief pleasant smell to the vindictive person. It seems like PWMS prefers the latter, which is strongly counterintuitive. Moreover, if PWMS must be a plausible alternative to Lux Sufficientarianism, it should be able to accommodate such concerns. However, right, so you have a supervillain who happens to be very poor, and so should we help the supervillain who happens to be very poor? This is the thing that they're asking here. It's like, really? Okay. It's like you can't do anything to change the calculation. All right. I mean, I expect you can just be like, no, we do not help supervillains. However, following CRISP, I consider just as relevant benefits to be non-trivial benefits, but the pleasant smell to the vindictive person is trivial and so is irrelevant to the standpoint of justice. Yeah, and so now they're hand-waving it away. It says, but we're including justice in the benefits. Yeah, again, this is now, what do you count as a benefit and whose justice is this? You know? If all those rich people weren't doing anything for society, maybe they deserve their lives to be in this like fantasy universe knocked off by a year. Maybe that would encourage them to actually help people that were poor, and no super villains would ever arise at that point. Maybe that would be the right thing to do. But again, now we're including justice, but according to who justice? So this is, again, moving the arbitrary lines around on what counts as like having enough or having too much. Yeah, exactly. And there ain't no objective measurement or fair or just. Like, you can maybe get some very basic agreement among people, but there's not going to be. Okay. We must therefore assume that the chemical will non-trivially benefit the vindictive person. Would that be justified according to PWMS? I mean, you can in a way, but like in these sorts of like abstract ideas, like I doubt it. I mean, yeah, you can do the deontological rules. You can do the utilitarian like goodness counts, but like in some sense, these are just reflective of what you already held. You know, like calorie counts, like how much money you need to live a month. That's fair. Like, yeah, you need a certain amount of calories and how much that costs to get you that amount of calories. That's true. But again, that's like not, that is so far removed from like this like poison that kills lots of people or knocks years off your life. Like, yeah, no, that's not what we have. Like, not what we can do. Yeah, fairness. I personally don't need government assistance for childcare, but other people do. Yeah, so again, we could do this stuff, but that falls back on your pre-existing views. None of this sort of like T plus T minus. We're not getting anything out of this theory here. So yeah, it's like then you need to, again, build the justice into the T plus and T minus, which is not going to be like, it's non-trivial. I guess they could say, look, you can do that though. And their theory can account for that. But again, that was Crisp that said this. So they're just, waving the objection away. Okay, so that providing enough to meet T minus has lexical priority over providing benefits above T plus does not justify any kind of redistribution from those above T plus to those below T minus. The vindictive person, for example, clearly fails to treat those above T plus with sufficient concern and respect, and in doing so may forfeit their claim to additional benefits. Again, this is just how they feel justice goes here. Like, this does not actually mean that this is justice. This is just their feeling about it. So there's no eye for an eye here, I guess. Or maybe there is. But, like, exactly what does this mean? Again, this is how you set the T plus and T minus limits. Still, the objection is right in that in certain cases, people who are below T minus due to their own fault will be benefited at the expense of those above T plus. Here again, however, PWMS significantly mitigates the problems that such a lexical priority raises compared with lexical sufficientarianism, because it is only in these specific cases that concerns for luck are lexically outweighed by concerns for sufficiency. With these qualifications in place, sufficientarians should consider the remaining concerns for indifference regarding desert and responsibility below T minus to be a virtue rather than a vice of their view, as is suggested by Roulette. Such qualified indifference is, in my view, part of the most plausible view about what justice requires regarding people who are below T minus due to their own faults and choices. Yeah, it's like you have to get people out of being poor. Fair. But still. Okay, in this article I have discussed Carl Knight's argument that lexical sufficientarianism falls prey to the excessiveness objection. I have distinguished 3 ways in which sufficientarian views can be weighted, and I have outlined 4 desiderata distributive patterns must meet in response to the excessiveness objection. Furthermore, I have defended partially weighted multi-threshold sufficientarianism, which gives weighted priority to benefits directly above and below each of its thresholds, but gives providing enough to meet the lowest threshold lexical priority over providing benefits above the highest threshold. I have argued that such sufficientarianism is preferable to Lux sufficientarianism and prioritarianism, while at the same time responsive to the excessiveness objection. Done. And it says, I can't believe this is a 2023 paper. This dude is a few centuries behind in the debate. I swear some people publish any shit just to publish. Yes, that's true. They do publish any shit just to publish, but, that is the world we do live in, publish or perish. Anyway, let's get a quick review off. And now everyone in chat is welcome to review. If you are on YouTube, you do have to come over to Twitch. I'm sorry about that. I do not have this set up across multiple chats. But if you want to like you can see it on screen. I doubt you probably, yeah, you can't use it. But what you can do is you put the little emotes into chat. You can copy them if you're on mobile, or can type them out. The names are on screen. So like this was kind of navel gazing. This is basically for only, like, I don't even know who this is for. We're going to give this 2 navels. We're going to do a vote nay because it was not really worth reading. Let's see, what else can we say? This was not a brain dance. This does not give you any good ideas. Let's see, big idea that no, this is just, I don't even know what this calls. Yeah, I guess this is golden turd. So this is nog turd. Because it you know, they didn't make any big claims that dried up. But like they put it all together, but it didn't really do much of anything. So this is gonna be, I'm gonna give it a second vote nay, because I do count the number of stuff that come through. So thank you, Anne, for voting. But it's just like, look, threshold theories, we've known this forever. All this other stuff, we've known this forever. They're just saying basically you have to help the people at the bottom, and then, you know, make a decision for the people in the middle, and then the people at the top, they don't get any extra help. This is just like basically very sort of a conservative viewpoint dressed up as, you know, trying to be like, oh, we're very responsive to the concerns of like how to make policy. This is just not a very, it didn't say anything new. Like, they've done it in a kind of not that they just did it in technical language, but I don't care about technical language. That's fine, but did it add anything? I don't think the technicalities really added a whole lot. Granted, in this area, maybe this is how you describe stuff, but again, this is not really adding anything new.